All right, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce my next guest. Loved him on Too Close for Comfort, Hollywood Squares, Spaceballs, ALF, and so much more. Welcome to the show, the last prince left in the galaxy, Jim J. Bullock. Hello.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I just don't want to look at myself here, but I won't look at myself. I'll look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it distracts me. My teeth are so white, and they're not even that white. So it's like I don't know why they're so brilliantly white. But hey, better that than the other way around.
Oh, we both got good teeth. We could just do this all the time.
No, I'm doing good. We're in. I live here in Palm Springs. It's summer. It's hot.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Grew up watching you on TV, so it's always fun to talk to someone that I watched in so many things and get some scoop on how you got where you got. Did you know you always wanted to act?
No, I didn't always know wanted to act. I discovered early on in my life that my humor got me attention, and I'm an attention whore. I like that attention. I found out that I was funny, and that worked in my favor. And so with the attention thing, it was like, I want more of this. And so I've always been attracted to the acting world. I mean, I grew up in a very small West Texas town, and no one in my family was in show business. My dad was in oil, not like a Ewing, but like a regular oil worker. And we grew up, middle class, but it was certainly not anything that I had any connection with or any touchstone with in my life. But I sort of, as I got into high school and got into plays, I discovered I had a flair for it, and that, okay, I think this is going to work for me. And then I went to college and I got into a production and ended up with that production going so well and having such success with that production. I went, this is what I think I'm here on this earth to do. So I came out to Hollywood when I was just turned 22. And
what was the production?
Oh, a Godspell. So I did a production of the musical Godspell in college, like who didn't in the early 70s, right? Everybody has been in Godspell at one point or another. Have you?
I have not. It's funny you mentioned that because I think like most of the cast of SCTV started in Godspell. I think I was talking to Cam Clark recently. He was Jesus's understudy.
Oh my gosh. Well, that would make sense because Godspell is such a improvish kind of a show. It's not a, you can kind of make it whatever you want it to be, and that's encouraged. And so anyway, I really got to use my silliness and my my humor, and I got to sing and all that. So I just went, this is what I really love doing. I came out to LA to study at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute on Hollywood Boulevard at that time. I was accepted over the phone, and I thought, oh my God, they can hear my talent over the phone. Little did I realize that they're going to accept anybody who has any money to wave their way. Now, I'm not knocking acting schools, but they're businesses, and they want to make money. And so I came out. It was the bait that drew me out here. And I'm grateful for that. And I studied at the Strasberg Theater Institute for 6 months. And then I left because I'm certainly not a method actor.
I heard you talking about how you did stand-up comedy.
Yes, I did.
I did stand-up comedy also. So it worked out better for you than it did for me. But like, how did you pivot into or kind of do that on the side or while you were following the loose roll? Yeah.
Well, I came out and, like I said, I studied at Strasberg for 6 months. And then it was sort of like reality set in. And, you have to get a job. And my parents had made it clear they weren't going to support me out here. So I had to get a job. And so, I got a job as a waiter. And then I got cast in yet another production of Godspell. Godspell worked very, very well in my favor. Stephen Schwartz, he has no idea what hand he had in getting me my career. But I did that production of Godspell out here, and an agent saw me and called me and said, I want to meet with you. And so I met with her, and I was so excited because having an agent was like, oh my God, it's like you had an agent. Basically, what she said to me is, I can't sign you because I am only a junior agent at this agency, but I see something in you and I want to help you. Oh, I should be playing with my AirPods because I think it's doing something. Okay? Is everything, my sound okay?
Yeah.
That causes you to go in and out. So she said, what do you want? And I said, I want a sitcom. And she said, okay, you have to do stand up. And I went, oh, no, I'm not doing stand up. I am not doing stand up. She said, believe me, if you want to get on a sitcom, this is the place to go. Comedy Store, Improv. So, this crazy woman, Joanne King, worked with me for what seemed like many, many months. I don't think it was that many months. I think it was more weeks. But she would come over to my little apartment. I would make her a sandwich, and she would just sit there, and she had a great laugh. And she would just say, go, do silly things. And I would just do silly shit, just doing the silliest, stupid stuff. And she would had these index cards. Write that down. Put the name of that on that index card. And I had props. So one day, it was a Sunday, and she said, I want you to come over to my apartment. We'll work at my apartment. And this was all on the up and up. I don't think she was, out for me or anything. And I was gay. So I went over she said, bring your props. So I went over to her apartment, and she goes, okay, let's go. And I said, go where? And she said, the Improv. It's open mic night. I went, oh, no. Oh, no. I said, I'll be ready next Sunday. She goes, you're never going to be ready, Jim. She goes, you just have to do it. That driving over the hill into Hollywood to go to the Improv was like one of the longest drives of my life. And then you got there and you put your name in a hat, literally. You wrote your name on a piece of paper and you sat in the audience and waited for your name to be called. It was terrifying.
So they didn't make a list. It was random as you went.
Oh yeah, no list. No. Here's a hat. Okay. Please welcome. There was a couple of Jims or Jimmies, and anytime please welcome Jim Makala, I would be, oh my God, and I'd have a heart attack. And once they did call my name, I don't remember what happened. I really don't. I sort of blacked out. My energy. I was so crazy. And I just really don't remember what I did. I do remember being at the top of the stairs somehow. I got up there and then it was over. And then I was like, oh God, I bombed. I was horrible. And as we were leaving, this guy comes up and says, Bud Friedman wants to talk to you. And I went, who's Bud Friedman? And he goes, he owns the Improv. And I went, oh, he wants to. And he goes, yeah, he wants to talk to you. So he took me on that night as a regular. And then 1 week later, I went to the Comedy Store and I did the same thing with Mitzi Shore. I didn't have an act. I didn't have a routine. I was literally pulling shit out of the air. I was completely, whatever happened when I got up there, the hell with the index cards. It was like, I would just, it was like, sink or swim, and I would swim. And I got accepted at the Comedy Store. And so I started playing both Comedy Store and the Improv simultaneously, even though we were in a strike. It was a bad strike. They were Improv and the Comedy Store. Bud and Mitzi were at odds. But somehow they let me work both. And that's how I got into stand-up.
First of all, that's amazing. Maybe the Lee Strasberg did recognize your talent over the phone, because for you to show up one time to each of those places and get tapped by Bud and Mitzi the first time, pretty impressive. I got to say, that's really impressive.
Well, they see so many people. There's so many things that they could have saw in me. I think what they did see in me is this crazy, insane person who was willing to do anything for a laugh and had energy, unbridled energy that so worked in my favor. And I think that they saw that it was the dawning of Robin Williams and all that. And I just was at the right place at the right time. Joanne was right. I mean, she really was right about being at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing.
This is mid 70s, late 70s.
It's 1870. It's 1978.
Right. So I mean, that's like you walked in at the right time, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I mean, any night of the week, you would see Leno, Letterman, Billy Crystal, you name it, Steve Martin, Robin Williams, on and on and on and on. We're all there working. We're all working, doing stand up. Now these are legends.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's what a time to be there. Even just if you were just in the audience. I mean,
Truly.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Even if you were just in the audience, it would be a fantastic time to be there.
Comedy at its height. And you were playing the two biggest clubs, which most people can't choose. You usually have to choose one, right? You have
to. I know. Both were. Bud helped me get my first film, and Mitzi helped me get on contract with ABC, which then Too Close for Comfort came out of.
So boom, comedy, doing the comedy was the...
Comedy worked for me, and I hated it. I never liked it. I never felt confident. I would always get really nervous and have bad butterflies, and that nervousness never really left me. I did get a routine set. I got maybe 15 or 20 minutes. I was, headlining at the Comedy Store in the main room on Saturday nights. And especially after I got on contract with ABC, Mitzi really, really, really was pushing me.
Butterflies is what converts into the energy. So what you need to worry about is when you don't have that.
That's right. You definitely, you want that energy. Yes. Yeah. You never want to lose that.
Do you have video of you? I don't mean to show me right now or anything, but is there
any,
I
wish I did. I so wish I did. I have nothing of that. There was never, I didn't have any friends that had video cameras. So that was really kind of before that. So no, and unfortunately, I never got to do any sort of special or anything where I got to do stand-up. So it sort of came and went in my life pretty quickly, but I got what I wanted out of it. I got a series.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good for you. Better than some.
It sure did. It did. I stuck with stand-up, which is, I don't regret, but had I stuck with stand-up, because once I got Too Close for Comfort, it's like, bye. It's like, I don't need, I got here. You were my vessel to get here. And had I been smart and was looking ahead, which I've never been, thinking of tomorrow, I would have kept that stand-up career alive and going and continue growing it. But I really didn't think, I really was such an idiot. I really thought Too Close for Comfort was going to go forever, like it was Gunsmoke. I really never saw an ending to it. I thought, I don't need this. And in hindsight, stand-up could have really helped me through some rough times.
You can always go back, if you wanted to. I mean, it's like,
I kind of tried that, and it was a disaster. And I just don't think stand-up is a fit for me. If I were going to do anything, and I did do this, I did do sort of a cabaret, which I had more success at. Cabaret is more, stand-up is hard, and the audiences can be rough and brutal and very not polite. That heckling thing and everything, that kind of doesn't exist in the world of cabaret. So I did cabaret, and I was okay with it, but then I got lazy, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah, comedy is the greatest thing in the world, and then 10 minutes later can be the worst thing in the world.
You can have two shows back to back and do the exact same set in both shows and kill in one show and absolutely be a disaster in the other. And it's like, it's the chemistry of you and the audience and what's happening, and it's so instant. It's so of the moment.
Oh yeah, I remember, just like you said, first show killed it. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna do this forever. And the next show, it's like, I'm like, do they think I'm speaking Spanish? That's what they're looking at me like. They don't understand one word coming out of my mouth. It's like, oh my God.
So correct. So, oh God.
First movie. You said first movie. Is that Full Moon High? Is that your first?
Yeah, yes, Full Moon High. Oh my God. Full Moon High, most people don't know what Full Moon High is because it still gets played on cable networks and everything. It never had a theatrical release, which is what I was told it was going to have. And really, Full Moon High was like 1979, 1980. It was before HBO. It was before we had cable and all that stuff. So there was really only one venue, and that was going to be theatrical release, but it was delayed in its release, and then it never was released. And then when HBO did come along, Showtime and Stars and all those things that we had back in the 80s, it finally found a life on one of those. So you can see it on clips of it of YouTube.
It's a teenage werewolf story.
Yeah, it's
With,
sort of a remake of I Was a Teenage Werewolf with Michael Landon. And initially, this was a heartbreak early on for me. I was hired right there on the spot at the Improv. Bud introduced me to Larry Cohen, Larry Cohen Productions. Larry said, "Yeah, you kid, you're great. I want to put you in my movie." And it was just like, so, yeah, right. And I was not even jaded then, but I was like, I don't Bullock. But it turned out to be real. And he did put me in his movie. And not only did he put me in his movie, he put me on the leading role, which was the kid who gets bit and turns into a werewolf, the Michael Landon role. And then, it goes through my agency, and I actually have a contract. I've signed contracts and everything. And he wants to see me one day. So he wants me to come to his house. So I drive to his house in Berle. It's one of those big old Hollywood mansions. I went in, and it was just me and him. And he said, "I don't know how to tell you this other than to just come out and say it. But I'm having to take you off the lead and put you on a smaller role in it because Alan Arkin was willing to do a cameo if Adam Arkin got the role of the lead role." So he said, "It's business. You got to understand that I've got an opportunity for an A star to be in my film, and I have to take that and go with it." He said, "I'm putting you on a lesser role, and I know it doesn't have a lot in the script, but I'm going to do what you do best and just let you go." And so it was heartbreaking, but it was sort of like, okay. And then the money stayed the same, and I still had star billing, the front and closing credits. So it comes around to filming time, and I'm, they just turned the camera on me, and just was like floundering, doing whatever, hoping it was funny. And, Larry would go, "That was great, kid. Great, 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 great stuff." And so then the film does have a small little kind of, not a premiere, but, where a screening to where the cast and the crew are all come. And we went to a studio in Hollywood to see the screening, and I got to invite all my friends. And so I had like a row of theater taken up with my friends. Their opening credits is Jim J. Bullock, J.M., no J. It was J.M. because I used to spell Jim without an I. So it's Jim Bullock. And my friends are like, "Oh my God," big block, yellow letters. And then the movie starts, and then I'm nowhere near in it as much as I thought. I had been cut back to sort of what the original script was, which was really kind of a nothing role. And I remember the end of the movie and Jim Bullock, and then thinking, oh, I know what they're going to do. They're going to put a tag on, and they're going to put all my shit in a tag. So we'll just stay until after the credits and watch everything. Nothing. Lights up. Kind of silence. My friends felt so bad for me, and we're leaving the theater, and Larry Cohen stops me and says, "Sorry, kid, but the film was running really long, and I had to make edits. Unfortunately, as funny as your stuff was, it had to be cut." So that was sort of a hard lesson to learn. And then the movie was never released, and I had made like $5,000 on this film, which, my God. And I thought, okay, this is going to take me into my next movie or TV series or whatever. And I stopped doing stand-up, and I was just sitting there waiting for the movie to come out and for stardom to happen. And then I realized it wasn't going to be released, and I went, "You got to go back to stand-up." So I went back to stand up, and you pick yourself up.
Okay, but then right around the corner,
Yeah,
Monroe
right,
Ficus.
right
Yeah.
around the corner was something even bigger and even better. And yeah, that was thrilling. Starting with the contract that ABC put me on, that was thrilling. And then, when you're on a contract for a year. They usually sign you for a year, and they try to fit you into shows that they have on air, like Laverne and Shirley or Happy Days or whatever. And if there's anything in development. And so Too Close for Comfort was looking for this Monroe guy. And I went over and I met with them, the producers, and they didn't even read me. And that was sort of it. It was a very nice meeting. And then I never got a call on anything. I never heard about it. And then, like 2 months later, they're still looking for that character Monroe guy. The network calls them and says, "Hey, we want you to see Jim Bullock." And they said, "Yeah, we've already seen him. He was too fat and too gay."
You fat.
So I had lost some weight. I was never fat, but when I got the contract, I went, I can't make things happen, but I can do whatever I can do within my power to be ready. So losing weight I was just upping my weight. So I lost like 30 pounds on, what was it, Dexatrim and coffee and a Snickers bar.
A classic late 70s diet, really.
Healthy, very healthy. Starting the day with a big king size Snicker bar and a giant coffee, and then Dexatrim me through the rest of the day. Really good and healthy. But I lost like 30 pounds, so I looked really super duper. And so they begrudgingly read me. And this time I actually had a script, and I actually had dialogue, and it was a good script. And well, they read another scene, and then they said, "Can you take this out and look at this and bring that back in and read that here?" And it's like, sure. And so then the next thing I knew, I was at the network reading for the network. I got it.
Boom. Oh, so you did get it. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Oh,
no, I'm kidding.
no, I got, but there was only 2 guaranteed episodes when I first started. And I knew that with the possibility of reoccurring. But I went, who cares, man? 2 episodes on a Ted Knight series? Oh my God.
Right. That alone would be worth it right there. But so you make a huge impact, and they're like, oh, we're not letting this guy go.
Yeah. And Ted was like, we're not letting this guy go, because he needed to have a character that he could bounce off of. And, his deprivation humor kind of didn't work that well on his wife and his daughters. So he needed a second banana. Speaking of which, I just did not even think of this, to wear this banana shirt.
I love that banana shirt. I wish.
Thank you.
If we had a link, we could probably sell 1,000 of them right now.
But yeah, no, I was Ted's second banana. And so, yeah, they kept bringing me back. And it was like guest starring throughout the entire first season. And then right before the end of that first season, they took me on as a regular. And that was an amazing phone call.
That is amazing. And then if you flash forward, spoiler, if you flash forward, at least according to IMDb, you had more episodes than like Lydia and Deborah at the end.
The storyline changed, and they were trying to retool the show and there was like 5 years of Too Close for Comfort, and then the 6th year, which was called the Ted Knight Show. And so they were trying to get another syndication package of the Ted Knight Show, which, had Ted not been sick and had Ted lived, I have no doubts that it would have gone 5 more years. But Ted died, and they had just retooled the show to the Ted Knight Show, and you can't very well have Ted Knight Show without Ted Knight. Did not get picked up.
Right. I think they call it Too Close for Comfort now in syndication. But did you know he was sick when you were filming that final season, or was
the
it
final season? I didn't know. None of us knew what was wrong. None of us knew he had cancer. He was really, really private about that. we saw that he was losing weight, and we could tell that his energy wasn't the same. And he would have a lot of episodes where he was written in, and like Mr. Rush had the flu, and he was upstairs in the bedroom or whatever, just so he didn't have to work that much. So yeah, the load, I got a bigger load because he was less in the show. And then the show went on hiatus. We were picked up for a 7th season. And then everybody got the news that he had cancer, and then it was not a month or two after that that I got the news that he was going to be fine, and that he was doing alternative medicine, and but he was going to be fine. And then the next thing I know, he died.
Yeah, when Ted Knight died, I mean, when certain celebrities pass away, some hit you harder than others. I just remember because I love Ted Knight. And you know, like him, Robin Williams. There's like a small handful where you can be like, where like you like go, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like it just hits you so hard. He was just so funny. He was just
And he was so young,
yeah.
63. See, I mean, at the time, it looked like, oh my God, you're 63. I mean, but now I'm 70. And it's like, 63 was in the rearview mirror 7 years ago. I was a kid. Wow.
Isn't it funny how age is perceived? Because you said you're 70. He was 56 when that show started, I think. I read. And because I remember going, oh, that's only a year older than me. It's like, we don't look like Ted Knight.
But no, but he had that white hair.
Right.
And Ted had that body that middle-aged men had. It's just sort of like the high belt line, wearing his pants up high, like leisure pants. He was quite a character for sure.
So you were very close with them.
I was. We all were very close. We all had a great time working together. And it was, Ted's baby, and it was, he ran the ship, and as a matter of fact, he was offered the captain of the Love Boat, and he turned it down because he said, I don't want to be on some show where the effing star is a boat.
They cherry picked everyone from Mary Tyler Moore for the Love Boat.
Cut to Gavin McLeod like 14 years later on the Love Boat going, should have taken the Love Boat, Ted. I mean,
that was a payday for Gavin up until he passed away too.
Yes, it was. But it was a great time, 6 years. And yes, I loved Ted very much. He was a father, a show business father to me. My dad was not, he couldn't advise me as far as his career was concerned.
We had amazing chemistry, so it's not surprising that you guys clicked. I had Lydia on my show. She was talking about how your character was named after a friend of hers, Monroe.
Right. She's the one who suggested Monroe, and they went with it.
And that she was in love. She was in love with you and didn't know you were gay.
Well, I was not comfortable with my own self then. And it was just all starting for me. And I was terrified that would get in the way. And, I was having struggles within my own self with my spiritualness and my Christian upbringing. And so I did not tell anyone. But of course, anyone who had half a brain knew. And certainly Lydia and Deborah and Nancy and Audrey and Ted all knew. Everyone who worked on that show knew which side I buttered my bread on.
That's so funny. Because you and Lydia and Deborah, you guys still get together occasionally, right?
Yeah, we were just in Parsippany at the Chiller event there, and it was so great. It was lovely. It's always great to see them, and I love that we're here. We're all in our 70s now, and we're still in touch with each other, and we still love each other, and we have such an affection for each other. And Nancy too. It's just Nancy is older, and I think that she just doesn't want to have to work that hard, so she does not do these events. They would love it if she did, but they are a lot of work.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that they're pretty exhausting, but it's fun to meet your fans, right? And everyone.
It's always so. It's humbling. That's the best word I can think about it. It's humbling. How many people unknowingly touch their life in one way or another. It's very, very humbling.
Okay, so let's go on. Let's talk about something they're also huge. I mean, you worked with one of the biggest actors in the industry, Alf, but we'll get to that in a minute. I love Alf. I love Alf. But let's talk Spaceballs for a sec. I mean, always a classic, but people are talking about Spaceballs a little bit more now because they just announced a sequel. So, will Prince Valium be in the sequel?
I hope so. I would love that. I just heard that Rick Moranis is coming out of retirement to do Spaceballs 2. John Candy is, of course, not with us anymore. Daphne is coming back to do. I just heard that she's coming back. I think everyone that was
Bill Pullman,
I think, is coming back. I'm pretty sure he's coming back. And so, I'm hoping that they'll have me come back and yawn. I mean, I have worked on my yawn now for 40 years, and I've really gotten it perfected, and I'd love a chance to show it off.
Yeah, I think you hold the world record for most yawns per minute on screen.
Yeah, the least bit of dialogue and the most yawn. Yawn time. Plenty of yawn time.
I mean, Dick Van Dyke was there. Daphne was in your. I'm talking about like in your scene. So sometimes it's like I see the whole movie. I'm like, of course he knows Rick Moranis, but you may never have actually been in, whatever. How much of that cast did you get to hang out with? Did you get to? Was Mel Brooks kind of? He was the director, right? And so he being directed by Mel Brooks. I mean, like, it's just...
I went and I auditioned for Mel Brooks, and I was petrified because he was Mel Brooks, and I couldn't really. I was so nervous, and again, that crazy energy that I had, it sort of worked against me in that audition. I just couldn't pull it together, so I was all over the place. But he finally said, "You know what, kid? I don't know what you do exactly, but I'm going to give you this role." So I got the part. Then, months later, you actually shoot. And so my scenes were, I was probably the longest scene I worked on was a week, and it was the wedding. So all of the characters were there, Bill and Daphne and Rick and John Candy. But unfortunately, I had a really bad flu. I mean, looking back, I should have never gone in because I probably got everyone else sick. I mean, it was like both ends kind of flu bad. But I went, I can't call out. I don't know what I was thinking. I had already done 6 years on a series, and I know you can call out, and they just work around you or work something else. But I was so afraid that I was going to not be in it if I called out that I did go in, and I was really, really not well. Every time they call cut, I'd go, "Can I go to my trailer, please?" Again? And it'd be like, "Yes." And I had no time to get to visit with anyone or even chat with anyone. I remember at one point during the week, John Candy came up to me and he said, "I just have to tell you, my family, we adore Too Close for Comfort, and we love Monroe, and it's great to get to meet you." And I was just like, I'm just so starstruck. And by this time, it's the end of the week, and I'm feeling a little better. But by the time I started feeling better, my week was out. And then I had other scenes that I did that were not with the entire cast.
John Candy saying he's a fan of yours. That must have just been like a moment, surreal. Like, oh my God, you know my name.
I know, right? Like, you know who I am because, film and television. And even back then, I think the chasm was even wider. It was sort of like you're a film actor or you're a TV actor. I was visiting the world of film, and I was so excited to get to be in that world. And when you find someone like a John Candy, who was a movie star, even though he started out in TV, I'm sure he did Godspell.
I'm sure he must have.
For him to say that he was a fan of mine, it was very, very, very nice.
With the Hollywood Squares later, you did a lot with Joan Rivers, right? Was she ever on set for Spaceballs? Because she was just the voice. She wasn't actually in the...
Who was in that robot costume was Shields and Yarnell. Remember them?
Yeah.
Was Yarnell the girl?
Yeah, Lauren Yarnell.
Okay. So Lauren Yarnell was the robot, whatever the name of that robot was.
Dot Matrix.
Dot Matrix. And Joan Rivers was the voice. And when I worked with her after Spaceballs taped in like 1985, and I started working with Joan on Squares in 86, 87, we never ever even talked about Spaceballs, which is so weird. I look back on that and I go, we were in a film together and we never talked about it. Anyway, I guess
I guess if she just gave her voice, maybe it wasn't, you know what I mean? You never saw her. So
yeah.
All right. So that's amazing. Iconic movie. So that's really cool. And then you kind of came into ALF towards the end. ALF cracks me up. I don't know why. He just always has.
So goofy. A lot of people loved ALF. I did not watch ALF. I did not dislike ALF. I was thrilled to be on ALF. Again, it was a network show. And to get back on a network series was like, oh my God, that's so great. But you know what, Jeff, I really, really wasn't right for the role. There was another actor who it was between me and him, and he really was what they wanted. But I had a pretty powerful manager at the time, and who was Joan Rivers' manager, Bill Samet, Cher's manager, and Olivia Newton-John's manager. So those were his three clients. And then here I am. I'm his fourth client. He had power and pull and got me on that series. And I feel like once I got on that show, all they did was try to change me. Like, that's funny, but don't do that. Let's do it this way. And it's like, I never felt like I was allowed to do what I did on that show. And it was hard being on that show because I had just quit smoking and I had just come off Hollywood Squares, which was an absolute party every week. It was a party. And then went to this show, shot in a warehouse district in Culver City somewhere, not even on a studio lot. And everybody on that show smoked. They'd call cut. And, the cuts were long because they had to dig trenches for ALF. So it was like, we're going to do this next scene, but it's going to be 4 hours before we get to it. So it'd be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So people had cigarettes stashed all over the set. They'd go, cut! And people open drawers and pull out the cigarettes. I did like. And I'm sitting there just watching everyone smoke and, jonesing. So it was boring and painful and torturous. ALF was ended that year anyway. It was not picked up. I hope I wasn't the angel of death.
No. All right. Let's talk about the party then. Let's talk about Hollywood Squares. It sounds like
let's talk about the Hollywood Squares years. Right, that was a party.
That was fun.
That was absolutely probably the most fun job I've ever had in my life.
It looks like the most fun job. Is it writers and do you get to kind of write or zhuzh it up yourself, like the comments?
It's the best of both worlds because there were wonderful writers for the show and they wrote really wonderful stuff. But they said to me, look, if you get hit by the muses to do something different, then please feel free. We always prefer what you do over what we've written for you to do. But the wonderful thing is sometimes the muses didn't hit you. And sometimes it'd be like, I am so grateful I have a joke answer written for me because I got nothing. So you came off looking like a genius all the time because, they're writing. And if you had a sense of humor and like to do things off the cuff like I did, then it worked very much in your favor. And everyone was so lovely. John Davison and Shadow and Joan Rivers was Rick Rosner, the whole staff. It was the gayest show I've ever been on in my life. It was just a bunch of, people on the staff and the production that were it was just a party. It was an absolute party and went all over the place. We did Radio City Music Hall for 2 weeks and went to the Bahamas and set the squares up on the beach and so fun. Kind of the first show of its kind to do that, to leave the studio and to go to the Bahamas and bring the Hollywood Squares to the Bahamas. or to Radio City. It was thrilling to get to be a part of that.
I was Googling some clips, and there was one where you were the center square, but Joan Rivers wasn't there. And the person next to you, whose name, unfortunately, I can't remember, but she was a great impressionist. So she started doing Joan Rivers. But it sounds like, but that's like what the show is to me. It's just like, it's just craziness. And you only have to be crazy for such a short amount of finite time that you can just nail it. And then they go on to the next person and you just leave them wanting more. And you just kind of, I mean, like, who was that? Like Betty White. And there was, I think Mark Summers was on this one, Don King, Charles Nelson Riley. I mean, it's just insane.
Everybody. And another thing is when you get to be on a show like that on a regular basis, they get to know who you are and they tune into your algorithm, so to speak. And so they really create and write specifically for you. And it was just the best time.
Right, because what you must have done well over 100 of those at least, or at least somewhere in that genre, in that number range. So yeah, they must have. They could probably just hear your voice, but at some point, yeah. I did see. If you don't want to tell this story, you don't have to. But I found this on IMDb. Milton Berle was a pig to me.
With a what?
Milton Berle, was he? Was he not good to you on that show?
Oh, Uncle Milty. When I was guesting, I had not become a regular, and so they had me come, and I was one of the Square guest stars, and Milton Berle was the big star that week in Center Square. And at dinner, because you did two or three shows, and then you'd break for dinner, and then you'd come back and you'd do two more, and you shot 5 shows in a day. At dinner, they said, we have an idea for you and Milton Berle. We had dinner, and the producers and the writers were discussing this with us and everything. And I was just thrilled because I thought, wow, Milton Berle. I mean, I'm a child of the 50s, 60s, and Milton Berle was
classic.
Mr. Show Business.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He was the face of American television. To get to do anything with him was thrilling, but he was really not very nice to me. He said to me, listen, it was the pie in the face routine, basically. I was up in my upper right upper square, and he was in the center. And during his question, he had a pie. It was about pie, and they wanted me to monkey down into his square, which I did, which I was totally happy doing that. Of course, I could have been killed, but I didn't think about that stuff. So I just monkeyed down into his square, and he had the pie, and it's, pie in the face. And he basically said to me, he said, listen, you do exactly what I tell you. I created this bit. So you do exactly what I tell you, and none of that fag shit, okay? And I was so, whatever, absolutely, you know best. And I wasn't even insulted by that comment. I just sort of like, I'll do whatever Milton Berle tells me to do. And created the bit, which I doubt.
Right.
Anyway, I monkeyed down into his square and was like goggling and Googling over him. And he did the pie in the face. And I ignored every response I had, every comic synopsis that was going off in my brain. I just shut myself down to do what Uncle Milty had told me to do, and it didn't work. It wasn't funny. It was tired. People had seen it a million times. So, I went back up to my square with whipped cream going down in my underwear, dripping down my shirt. I did not like him. He was a mean, bitter man.
Yeah, that does not seem excusable behavior at all.
So. And to, top it off, he had such a fabulous life. What do you have to be bitter about? I mean, you're not Mr. TV anymore, but come on. You were. Oh, my God. I just thought you're so ungrateful. And
all right, let's talk about
back to ALF.
Back to ALF. Back to the happy times on ALF. So as I was looking at your IMDb, I see Queer Duck, and I'm like, that sounds so familiar. And then I realize it's familiar to me because Mike Reiss, who created it,
Mike
was
Reese,
Mike
yes.
Reese was a guest on my show, and so we talked about it. Who also did Simpsons and The Critic and all that. So
Yeah.
you're the voice of Queer Duck, and
Yes, and getting to do animation and voiceover work, and all through the 80s, it was like people kept saying, "Why aren't you doing cartoons? Because your voice is so identifiable." And it's like, oh, I don't know, I don't know, And then at the end of, I think it was the end of the 90s, it might have even been 2000s when I went in and auditioned for this character, Queer Duck. I I went in and I auditioned for him, and I said something because I'd done a play, and there was a line in the play that was like, "Oh my gay God." So I said, "Oh my gay God," in the audition, and I threw that in, and I think that's why they hired me. we have to have that tagline. We got to have that. But it really became, "Oh my gay stars," and everything was like, "Oh my gay goodness," and everything. But boy, getting to do Queer Duck, RuPaul was my straight brother, and getting to work with those incredible cream of the crop as far as voiceover actors, were all those people, on Queer Duck, all those different characters, which are slipping my mind right now. God, they were fabulous. And to get to be in a room with them at a microphone, and I find doing voiceover was so creative. It was so creative. You just created this world with your voice.
it's so funny. They're like just 3-minute episodes. I think you can find them on YouTube. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So RuPaul, Estelle Harris, Tress McNeil, Billy West, bipolar bear.
Bipolar Bear,
Yeah.
Openly Gator,
Nick
Openly
Jameson,
Gator.
Maurice LaMarche, Kevin Michael Richardson.
And those guys could do anything. I mean, they could do anything. And it was just so, and Mike Reese was so, what do you want to do here? And it was really so absolutely creative. I just loved it. And I was very, we did a movie we started on, it was called icebox.com, and it was on the internet. And then it went to Queer as Folk. After that, on Showtime, there would be a new episode of Queered Up. And they were just, what, 5 minutes?
Yeah, they're real short, yeah.
If that. And then they did a full length feature, and it was a musical. And again, it never was released. Sort of been a sad story in my life, isn't it? Never really.
Is it available anywhere now though?
I don't know. I don't know.
We'll have to find out.
I don't even know what the name of the movie was.
Because Tim Curry, I think the name of the movie was Queer Duck, the movie.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah. Well, according to IMDb, maybe it was a working title, but yeah, Tim Curry was in the movie. Mark Hamill.
Okay, it was a 2006 film. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I can't believe all the people were in there. Wow.
So, all right. So you did an episode of Seinfeld. And then the interesting thing about, which is a great episode, but the funny thing is I had another guest on, Annie Corzin, who happened to also be on, I mean, she was a different character in Seinfeld also, but played a second character and was on that episode also. So I had just seen it recently. It's a really funny one. Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Jerry, one of them gets in the first class and the other one doesn't. And
it's sort of it became one of their classic episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it was just real quick, but boy, I'm telling you, Seinfeld, I wish I had done more of those, because it plays all the time. It's like doing a Law and Order. It's just like, oh my God, it repeats every minute of the hour. It was really exciting to get to do Seinfeld. I sort of was a hero flight attendants for a short time after that, because they were like, yes, you were our voice.
That's so funny. So how did you end up not on the Love Boat?
I never was on a Love Boat. Who the hell? I never got to do a Love Boat or a Fantasy Island. I mean, really?
How? I mean, that was like you're right in this sweet spot heyday of both those shows, and it was ABC, right?
I know it was the same network. I don't know. I know
that's a miss.
Again,
that's a miss on their part, I gotta say.
That'll go into my biography. Never released in theaters.
I appreciate you hanging out with me. Is there any one thing that we didn't talk about that you're like, oh, I love this one thing?
No, the Jim J. Tammy Faye show.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, I've got that right.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Tammy Faye was like my family were obsessed with Tammy Faye.
Yeah. And I never, ever, ever saw that coming. I mean, yeah, looking back, I've gotten to do some really great things in my career. And, it's sort of like at that time, I was shooting a series. I was living up in Toronto shooting a series called Boogie's Diner, which no one ever saw. One of the things that I had started thinking about was, wow, you know what I'd like to do next? Because I never thought about next. Never been a person to like plan. It just sort of like happens. But I thought one thing I would be good at is a talk show. I think I would be a good co-host person, like on a morning, especially in the morning, because my energy was so good in the morning. I come back to LA, get a call from this guy, Dan Weaver, says, he was with Fox Labs, and says, we have a project in mind with you. We'd love to meet with you. Would you be willing? Sure, absolutely. So I met with him, and he said, we have a talk show in mind where you would be a co-host on it. It was like, oh my God, I just made that happen. It's coming into fruition. And I was like, who are you thinking about? And he wouldn't tell me. And so it was sort of like, he said, well, let me tell you a little bit more about our idea and blah, 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 blah. And finally he said, and we're thinking about pairing you with Tammy Faye Baker Mesner. And he said, Tammy Faye Mesner. And I said, Tammy Faye Baker? And you'll probably have to bleep this, but my reaction was, she's fucking crazy. That was my what I actually said. He said, well, would you be willing to meet with her? And I said, oh my God, of course I would be willing to meet with her. I said, yes, I have the t-shirt. At the time, there was a t-shirt and it was a white t-shirt and it had all this color, blue and black and red on it and everything. It says, it just smeared on it and said, I ran into Tammy Faye at the mall. That was a t-shirt. I had that t-shirt. So I was like, yes, I would love to meet with her. So, they set up a meeting at the network. She walked in and I'll just never forget when she came through the door. I just went, wow, she's so pretty. She's a munchkin. She's a little thing, but wow, she got porcelain skin, crystal blue eyes, just gorgeous eyes. And the only thing that was kind of a tragedy was the hair. But I mean, everything else was working. And she wasn't a clown. I went, wow, I've sort of seen her for the first time. And so they gave us a couple of tabloids and they had a handheld video camera on the shoulder or whatever. Maybe it was before phones. It was some sort of a camera. And they said, okay, we want you guys to give us like a host chat intro and then a beginning, middle, and end to a talk show using these tabloids. Go. And it was under fluorescent lighting. There was no lighting. There was no set. There was no makeup. There was nothing. And Tammy just went off like a horse to the races, just like took off. And it was like we both were running and having, like we'd known each other forever, just pulling things out of the air to do host chat. And then we like open the tabloids, like Tammy would pull up an article. Oh my God, what is this? We'd talk about that. That was that. And, the networks do these focus groups where they have shows that they're coming out in their new season. And like some shows are fully produced series of pilots that they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on and everything and had names in them. And then they started slipping in this little tape of me and Tammy. And overwhelmingly, the response was, we want to see more of that weird talk show. That's when they started doing live run-throughs in person at Fox Studios. And they became like ticket in the town. People were waiting down the block to get into these live run-throughs that were only recorded for the writers and the producers to develop the show with it. So the show was in development and, there was it was just so free-formed. And that actually sold into a pilot. We got to do 50 episodes with Tammy before she had to leave the show because of her health. And after she left, they brought in a woman named Ann Abernethy, who was very talented and very capable and actually made my job easier because she was so qualified and had done talk shows. She had done Regis and everything for her. So she was totally a pro. But there was no Tammy. And the show lost magic. They did 100 more episodes with me and Ann, and it just never found its footing. And so it went away. But getting to work with Tammy was insane. It was insane, and you never knew what was going to happen. And it was thrilling and exhausting and frustrating and funny and spur of the moment and absolutely of the moment and in the moment. And she kept you on your toes. She really did. I loved Tammy. She was a genuine person.
She was definitely a character, and you guys did have. I mean, I YouTubed some of it, and like you guys had chemistry. I mean, it worked. I could see why everyone kind of jumped out of it. It's just like, oh yeah, okay, this works. You know, sometimes it works.
Tammy came from the right-wing Christian world, and I came from that. So I came from a Southern Baptist background. So we had that in common. So I understood where she was, and she kind of understood where I was. I think Tammy has always been loving and kind. You know, the whole gay thing. It was sort of the gays that caught her after the fall, and the gays that definitely, you know, they did that documentary called The Eyes of Tammy Faye that later became the film with Jessica Chastain.
She was so good.
So good. But, you know, it was the gays that gave her another career after she fell from PTO. So she changed her mind. She didn't change her mind. She became enlightened.
Yeah.
She got to see a different point of view than the radical right-wing Christian.
That's right. And yeah, I think they made that clear in the movie. I did see the movie. There was a whole scene, I think, where she was talking to someone with HIV or something. And like, it was a very powerful scene. Yeah.
They're at a time when no one was, she was not, I don't remember. I think she hugged him. And that was just sort of like, what? People didn't know there was such fear around it. But Tammy was great. My partner at the time had AIDS, and she was fabulous with him and loved John and loved me. And
that's awesome. It's great that you had that connection. So you're awesome. Thanks for sharing all these stories with me and hanging out with me. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, Jeff. I feel I've just talked so much.
You did, but it's all great. I appreciate it.
I feel like it's just sort of like, just, wind him up and let him go. I was always a good guest on talk shows because there was never any lull.
Well, I appreciate you bringing the stories and the energy. You're awesome, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, Jeff, thanks for having me on your show, and I appreciate that. Awesome. Next time. Spaceballs too, man.
I hope so. I'm going to cross my fingers. I don't see why it wouldn't happen. They need you. It's important. It's important. Your hair still looks great. You look great. I mean, so it's like there's no reason. There's no reason.
Thank you. Knock on wood.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.